Thanks once again for dropping by the channel. If you like the content, if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe, share the video if you enjoyed it, if you felt it was useful. Now let's get into this. So, basically in the last week, we've had announcements of, several fighters being, named. We're hearing such and such about, certain fighters. But then there's other fighters we're not hearing about. There's other fighters that we haven't heard about for a while. There's other fighters who we thought we kind of knew where they were going in terms of their next fight, in terms of, maybe what kind of path they're going down specifically. And now we're not hearing anything. Obviously, we're in strange times, so not everyone can get out. A lot of fighters are, they're not, how do I say, some fighters would rather wait it out than fight for less money. That is the way some fighters are going. Not all of them. Some fighters are just happy to just get out. They're happy to just get out, get back on a stage, even if there's no fans. They're happy just to get out. One fighter who I'm interested in because A, he's got a new trainer who he appears to be listening to, but I have a lot of questions about that trainer. And second of all, 2020, pre-lockdown, promised a fight for this guy, or more or less promised a fight for this guy. It's not materialized. The fighter I'm talking about is Chris Eubank Jr. Now, Eubank Jr. has been he's been very vocal in the past few weeks with, blasting Billy Joe Saunders and saying that, Canelo and him is the only fight that makes sense from, any point of view. But when I flash my memory back to last year, okay, this guy was just signed with Al Heyman, had beat James DeGale in the UK. Yeah, it was a faded James DeGale. It was a horror. It was a shot James DeGale. We still had to go in there and get the job done. And then, after that fight, we heard 3, maybe even 4 fights for Eubank Jr. in 2019. We got 1 extra fight. So we had 2 fights all last year from him. And even then, that was a short notice. That just kind of came out of the blue that he was fighting Korobov. And obviously Korobov got injured. So that was that. But the reason we got that fight was because it was leading to all this talk of Jamel Charlo. Is it Jamal or Jamel? No, it was Jamel Charlo and Eubank Jr. fighting in 2020. WBC middleweight title, all this good stuff, etc., etc. That was what we were hearing. That was the plan, right? Well, now Charlo was fighting Derevchenko, and hey, I'm not complaining about that fight. That's a good fight. That's a great fight in of its own self. But it's had me now question what the hell is happening with Chris Eubank Jr. in his career, because there's no fights seemingly announced, for him. There's no fights on the horizon for him. Eubank Jr. wants to be the main event most of the time, or if not, the co-main event. So with PBC and Al Heyman pretty much announcing their schedule until the end of the year, and Eubank Jr., he's not a particularly big name in the US. He's more a guy who fights, in the UK. He could sell out, well, if we had fans, he could do well. He could do good numbers in certain arenas. But Al Heyman and PBC UK, I mean, that was like, a failed brand, or a crap TV show. He gave it 1 pilot and it just died. It got cancelled, got binned straight away. That seems like kind of what PBC UK was. So I can't see Heyman bringing any fights over here. So what's going to happen with Eubank Jr.? Where is he going to go? What is he going to do? I wouldn't necessarily say he's got a big problem yet, but it's an interesting one, because there's no fights lined up. There's no mention of any fights. Imagine this. He goes and works with Roy Jones. From my eye, I saw a little bit of improvement there. He goes and works with Roy Jones. Roy Jones gets a fight at 51 years of age. And a high profile. Well, we'll call it an exhibition. It's not really a fight. But he gets an exhibition fight, like style fight. And he's probably going to make more money for that than Eubank probably did in his last 2 fights. Seriously. It's crazy. And with regards to Eubank and Roy Jones, it seems as though Eubank is actually listening to his coach now, which is a good thing. But I've said this once and I'll say it again. A lot of times great fighters don't make great coaches. And a lot of times someone will look at a fighter and what they did in their career and think, well, if I train like him, I can have that same success. Not, looking at the fact that the fighter who's training you may have had crazy athleticism. He may have just been a freak of nature athletically, had good punching power, had amazing speed, things that you may have elements of it, but you don't have it to that level. You don't have that package. So I think that's what happens with some fighters, you know, when they're looking for a trainer. With Roy Jones, I don't know if he would necessarily be the guy I would have training Eubank Jr. I think when he was meant to train with Virgil Hunter, I think that would have been a fantastic fit for Eubank Jr. You know, Virgil Hunter, but say la vie, that's obviously not happened. So yeah, the moral of this video was basically, who is he going to fight next? The guy done a video and I said that the other day, I said that Billy Joe versus Eubank Jr. makes the most sense, and I still think it does for both men. Because realistically, who is Billy Joe going to fight that's going to generate many money? You know, if Callum Smith was to lose to Canelo, if he fights him, is he going to fight Danny Jacobs? Is he going to fight Demetrius Andre? I doubt it at this stage. Eubank Jr. next year, when crowds are allowed back in, full crowds, you're going to make some decent money, I think, anyway. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. It's interesting. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know. Do you think that Eubank Jr., he's fallen off the ball the last few years, pretty much since he lost his pen in the negotiations for Triple G? Do you think that Eubank Jr. he didn't get the Triple G fight, and since then his career, although it's been successful in terms of, you know, revenue he's gotten, it's just been kind of all over the place, you know, with going here, going there, going to the US, coming back, stuff like that. Let me know your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to call it quits here. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe of course, and share the video, because of all this, it really does. I don't ask for likes because I want them, you know, it's nice, but it just helps the video get out there the more likes I get. So if you can do all that, people, I'd much appreciate it. Thank you again for 2K subs, and as always, peeps, I will talk to you.